So, Krista, we have a lot to break down and talk about today, but Roe v. Wade, obviously the 1973 Supreme Court abortion case that legalized abortion around the country, has been overturned. And I know this is a big question, but I'm going to throw it to you because you know these issues so well. What does the church and what do pro lifers need to do now in the wake of that decision?
What the church in particular needs to do now is to do what they should have been doing since 1973, and that is caring for those women and their children who made the choice not to abort their children. Now we're in a situation, Billy, where everybody's running around saying, now what? Now what? Well, we should have thought about this before. And now is the time. We didn't do it before. Now is the time to say, how can we help those women who found themselves in a crisis pregnancy situation, and now abortion isn't an option anymore, but they still need the help? And my personal belief is if we as a church would have been there all along to say, we're going to be helping you no matter no no matter what your situation is, we believe that the church is the answer and we could help you. I personally believe that First Peter 4:10 says everybody has something that they can offer. Any resource a woman in an unplanned pregnancy lacks or any need she has can be met by somebody within the church. So now is the time for us to say, we believe that baby's life is precious, but we also believe that mom's life is precious. So let's help her. Let's help her find out who it is that God's created her to be. And everything from helping her financially, helping her with housing, helping her with job placement, anything that can help her move forward in life and therefore help her child.
Well, and let's talk about that because you have done this work through Teen Mother Choices International. This is a nonprofit that you founded and you created this organization that has been doing this work. Yeah, and to your point, I mean a lot of great organizations like yours are out there, but the need is so broad. All of the people who are wondering what do we do now, I think you make a great point. We should have been really engaged in doing this to a really excessive level all along, but people like you have been doing that. Let's talk a little bit about Teen Mother Choices. What do you guys do? Let's start there and then we'll get into the history of the organization.
Okay, first of all, Team Other Choices has been around since 1989, so for 32 years. For 32 years, we have focused our attention on teenage moms between the ages of 13 to 23 who have already given birth to their children. So we don't work with them when they're pregnant. We do the aftercare. We like saying we serve young women, young mothers who have made the life choice to parent their children. So there's lots of organizations that work with them well through the whole pregnancy situation. Our focus is on afterwards. Everything from helping her with her finances, helping her get a job, helping her finish high school, anything that can help her become a more responsible adult and therefore a better parent.
And you work through training churches, right? Churches come in, they partner, they're trained. Talk about that process a little bit because there may be people who are hearing this right now and who are saying, oh, wow, this is really interesting. Maybe this is something my church could do.
And in 1989, when Teen Mother Choices first started, we developed the program. In 2009, we created Teen Mother Choices International, which is, as you said, the training and the equipping organization where we train churches, local churches, as well as pregnancy care and resource centers to implement this program into what they're already doing. Our job is to walk side by side by side with those individuals that want to implement the program. Serving teen moms who have chosen to parent their children is very different than serving a woman that's in a pregnancy situation because you're talking long term. On average, a woman is in this program for up to 3.5 years. We have to get her to at least finish high school. We have to help her at least get a job and so on. So it's much more long term. Teen Mother Choices International sits with a church, sits with a pregnancy care center all the way through until they decide they don't want to do the license anymore, as long as they don't want to do the program anymore. So our longest running license has been in existence for 12 years. For 12 years, they've served girls that have chosen to parent their children.
And how many churches and pregnancy resource centers and organizations do you work with?
Right now, we have 6 licensees that are around the country, and we have many more, and especially now since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, many more that have reached out to us that have said, "Tell us how we need to do this." So we're actually in a great position right now to be able to train and equip others.
Let's talk about these needs because you've seen this firsthand, obviously, and I want to get into your personal story as well. But when we look at what a teen mom, and I love what you said because you guys are coming into this just to clarify this so people understand. As you said, a lot of women they go to crisis pregnancy centers because they're pregnant and they're struggling and they need help and they're trying to figure out what to do. That's already been made, that decision by the time that these girls are going through churches or organizations. By the time they reach those churches, they're having the baby, they've had the baby. So you're past all of that. What are some of the needs? You mentioned a few of them, but just so people get a sense, because we talk about this from a 30,000-foot level, but what do teen mothers need?
Interestingly enough, we will. I'm saying we in the general sense. We'll tell them they just need to go finish high school. Okay, who's going to pay for the childcare so that they can go back to high school? I mean, if they're going
Mm.
to go back to high school full time, if you're working with a girl that's a sophomore in high school, she's got at least 2 more years to finish. How is she going to pay for that childcare? Many states have taken away the funding for childcare because there's no way to, the government can't pay for it anymore. Now the girl says it's easier for me to drop out of school. So there's one way. How can you help pay for childcare so the girl can go back to school? Secondly, we say to this girl, you need to go get a job. You got to get off of welfare. Go get a job. Okay. So she goes, she fills out the application, she gets a job. She finds out, she's 17 years old, she finds out that, oh, her wages are going to be garnished because somebody has stolen her social security number and has racked up over $40,000 on her social security number. Now, what do you do? We throw out these very quick answers. Well, get a job, get off of welfare. But we don't realize there's a whole backstory back there that got them to this point. How are we going to walk side by side with her to get her past that? So those anything that a teen mom resource she needs, any information she's lacking, we want to be able to provide that for her.
And so when it comes to training those organizations and churches, let's say they're in a situation like that where somebody needs childcare. What are some of the ways that these churches and centers are then helping to meet those needs that you've seen?
The biggest service I believe that Teen Mother Choices International provides for churches or a pregnancy center that wants to implement the Teen Mother Choices program into what they're already doing is the fact, Billy, we're there every step of the way. Every program director meets with her TMCI training coach every 2 weeks just to give them an update. What's going on? What are you struggling with? How can we help you? And so questions like that, how do I find childcare, are things that we want to work with them to find the answers, because again, every community is different. There are some communities that have lots of childcare for teenage moms. Other communities, and what we're finding is the rural communities have little, if any, kind of resources available. And this is a really great way for the church to step in and say, we're going to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of churches opening childcare, for that very reason, right? They'll open it up because they recognize that there's a need for it. And so I love what you said there because every area is different. Every area has different needs. And so these centers, these churches and organizations, they would then adapt to maybe what those needs are and what the needs of the women coming in are. And I would imagine those needs even change over time.
Absolutely. One of the first parts of starting a Teen Mother Choices program is to do a community feasibility study to find out, where are the teen moms? What does the high school provide for teen moms? Do they provide anything? Again, part of that feasibility study, which takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months to complete. We walk through that feasibility study with the church or the pregnancy center that's looking to do it. And yes, it's during that time when you find out what is lacking, what do we need, what is the one, quite honestly, what is the one obstacle that is stopping teen moms in our community from moving forward, and how can we then provide, how can the Teen Mother Choices program provide the removal of that obstacle? Is it childcare? Is it transportation? Here's an interesting story, Billy. We helped a Teen Mother Choices program in a very rural community. Found out that this community had about 5,000 people in the community. Nobody was graduating from high school. No, I'm sorry, no teen mom was graduating from high school. And yet there were 3 filter high schools around this community that the girls went to. And all 3 filter high schools had childcare centers, but the childcare centers were getting ready to close. And it's like, how is that possible? So in the feasibility study, we dug a little bit deeper. And what did we find out? Yeah, the high schools provided childcare centers, but they did not provide transportation to get to the high school center, to the high schools. So Teen Mother Choices stepped in and said, we'll start a voucher program for that high school to, we'll pay for it so that the girls can get picked up by a cab and dropped off and then brought back home. And the Teen Mother Choices program started. Lo and behold, girls are going back to school.
So that's such a simple fix, but if you don't know what the problem is, right? It's a big problem, but it's actually a simple fix. And so that's the kind of work that you guys are doing. And here you are, you're watching this happen nationwide right now. Roe is going to be gone. You're going to have a lot of different laws and regulations. We're still figuring all that out. It's going to be very chaotic, but these needs are going to probably intensify and become even more complicated. And so, what's your message right now? Because I don't want to discount the fact we know there's lots of great organizations like yours. There aren't a lot like yours, so yours is very unique. But there are a lot of organizations that do help. But the need is going to be so sweeping and big. What do you say to those Christians who are watching right now in those churches who may have interest in getting involved in some way?
I would say know your community. This is not a cookie. Teen Mother Choices is not a cookie cutter program. It is, there are 4 cornerstones: setting goals, mentors, life skills workshops, and incentive programs, anything from transportation to childcare, whatever. Those 4 are the same. How you implement them into your community requires you to know, what exactly do the teen moms in your community know? We can't do these blanket programs saying, okay, it's going to fit everywhere, because it won't. Find out what your community knows. That requires us as Christians within the local church to know, what are the needs in our community and how can we as a church meet those needs. That's what I believe makes the Teen Mother Choices program successful, is we can help train you to do the Teen Mother Choices program. It's your responsibility. Know your community, and let's figure out a way to serve the girls in your community.
Now, we're only 4 days past the Supreme Court verdict on the Dobbs case, which overturned Roe. Have you had an influx of people reaching out to you? I mean, how have you been impacted as an organization by this?
Yeah, it's interesting that there are individuals out there who have known about Teen Mother Choices for a long time. And we've tried to partner with them in the past, and then for whatever reason, it wasn't the right time or whatever. But now those individuals, those organizations are coming out saying, oh no, can you help us? Can you help us? Which, thank you, God. We're grateful that we can do that. I just had a call yesterday with a young woman in Milwaukee. Milwaukee has a huge teen mom problem. And this woman from a local church, very small local church, reached out to us and said, help us get this started here in Milwaukee. And so I think that for us, because we don't even deal with the abortion issue, it's afterwards. I think the whole Roe v. Wade overturning is really come back to, we do need to figure out what we're going to do now. What?
Now what? And I think that's the big question. And it's an opportunity for churches and the pro-life movement as a whole to push a reboot button and to really accelerate what has been done and to do new things and to get creative and to figure out what that looks like in all 50 states because it's going to look different in every state. But I have to ask you, Christy, your own story, because the big question, if I'm a viewer and I'm watching this, I'm thinking, why did she do this? Why did she create Teen Mother Choices? What was the impetus for that in your life?
I, Billy, I was blessed to grow up in a great Christian home where I learned about Jesus at a really young age. Actually, I learned about Jesus and came face to face with Jesus when I was 6 years old. When I was 8 years old, I knew I was going to be a missionary. And I remember telling my mom, I'm going to be a missionary here in the United States. And my mom kind of looked at me and she says, well, if you want to be a missionary, you've got to go overseas. And I said, nope, I'm going to be a missionary in the United States. Well, fast forward into high school, and I did what a lot of Christian kids do, and that is I developed a spiritual case of Christian schizophrenia, where it was one thing at home and one thing at church and with my family. And I ended up at 18 pregnant myself out of wedlock. And my parents had never met the guy that I got pregnant from, so they didn't even know I was dating anybody. But I ended up getting pregnant, and in my own selfishness, in my own heart, I knew I would have the support of my family if I chose to give this child birth. Um, but my selfishness, I said, I don't want to be pregnant. So at 18, I aborted my child, which really was the catalyst to seriously pushing me downhill. But then God miraculously brought me back to Himself and brought my boyfriend to himself, and we ended up getting married, and we have two more children. And but in the back of my mind, there was always this: what is God going to do with that? What is God going to do with my worst mistake? Because I believe that's where God shines the most, is in our worst mistakes. And so I was in a shopping mall when I was pregnant with my second child, and I saw all these girls pushing baby strollers, and I said, why, it's a school day, why aren't you in school? And they gave me all kinds of reasons why. And so I left home saying, we got to do something. And that became the 10-month feasibility study of finding out what could we do for girls solely that chose to parent their children. And I kept thinking all during the 10-month feasibility study that God was going to bring somebody along that was going to make this happen. And lo and behold, He said, no, I think you're going to do it. So
It
yeah,
was you. You were the you were the person. And
I
here
kept
you
going.
are. And here you are. This is not an easy job. This is not an easy job what you do. And it's not easy for a lot of reasons. There are a lot of key players, there are a lot of people, there are a lot, and I know this because I've known you for a long time now and I've known the work you do. What would you say, just as we sort of round out to a close here, has been the biggest lesson for you? And it could be a life lesson, it could be a specific lesson about this issue, but what have you learned the most as you've journeyed through your work at Team Mother Choices?
Billy, the biggest lesson I've learned is God takes what we as humans view as the worst thing that could possibly happen. And when we turn those things over to Him, He's like, watch me work. I have seen Him take lives that everybody else had counted out as nope, no good, nothing will ever happen, nothing good will ever come from them. And they shine like nobody's business. God is still in the habit and at work in changing people's lives. He's still doing that. We just need to let Him.
Krista, thank you so much. And where can people go if they're interested? If they say, we want more information, we want to bring this to our church, we want to explore, we want to do a feasibility study and see if it's possible in our community, where can they go to get more information?
I'd encourage them to go to our website, which is teenmotherchoices.org. And many people think it's Teen Mother's Choice, but it's one mother, many choices. So teenmotherchoices.org, and learn all about us.
Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Billy.